All right, I am here. This got one like. Let me fix my shirt. This got one like preemptively or before I started. Um, so I don't know who else going to come through. I know one of the other guys is going right now, and I'm going to play the intro for this one because I always play the intro when I cam up, and then I will see you guys on the other side, and then we're going to talk about America's first Black billionaire. And hopefully we all learned something. And I know that I learned something from reading about this gentleman and doing some last research this morning. So I'll see you guys on the other side. If you're new coming in, please hit that like button, and I'll see you guys on the other side. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Dr. Anwar Youssef Dunbar, and this is Big Discussions 76, my original channel. First of all, please like the stream, please share it, and please subscribe to my channel. And that also goes for you if you're watching on the playback. The super chat is live over here, but you can super chat me comments throughout this discussion. And also, if you, MLR, what's going on? Also, if you want to donate via Cash App or PayPal, that information is here as well. So I'm going to make two announcements, and then I'm going to get on with the main course here, because I think this is, for me, this is very, very exciting to talk about, and I wish I had been exposed to this gentleman earlier in life. And I think there's just so much here in terms of information and just information and what learning about this man's life can teach us and help us going forward in terms of building and just growing and prospering and becoming our better selves. First announcement, please consider joining. I don't have it queued up, but I'm fixing that right now. Please hit that like button. There we are. All right. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. Oh, I see one of the bots is here. I hope the bot doesn't join the newsletter. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That the link for this is below. There's a greeting, and you put your information in the subscription box there. That's if you're interested in following me as a YouTube content creator and a writer, because I was a writer first before coming here. So that's there, and I'm working on a book project. Also, social media. Everybody's marketing. Everybody's showing their wares and advertising and showing what they have to offer to the world. Oh, it's not letting me block this bot. Let me try it again. Okay, well, I'm not going to hold up the show for that bot. Hey, if you're new coming in, please hit the like button. So social media, everybody, MLR, if you have a wrench, please hide that thing if you can, if you're still here. Yeah, you have a wrench. Yeah, so please, appreciate that. Social media and advertising. We're talking about business, so a major part of business is advertising, and I one of the vehicles I use to get my content out there is Twitter. I am just starting to learn how to use Reddit. MLR, appreciate that. I don't know where those things come from or why they come in here, but they do. Appreciate that. And so I use Twitter to get my stuff out there. And I tweeted my Black History Month live stream on earlier this week, and another member of the Twitter sphere saw that as an opportunity, or thought she'd piggyback off of my tweet. So she's selling Black History Month T-shirts. To me, it seems like a worthy venture and a worthy cause. So I told this woman, Alice, that I would show her tweet and her sweatshirts to open up the stream, because this is Black History Month, and what she's doing is in line with what I'm doing right now. And I think part of her marketing is you could wear this throughout the year. So I'm going to show this really quickly. I told her I'd do this. I forgot to do this during my Black Astronauts stream. But here this is. So there that is. So she wrote Black History. This is Alice at Art1, Alice_Art1 on Twitter. So she tweeted, "Amazing Black History Month sweatshirt to wear all year, limited edition. Please support me. Support me, please." Link to the order. So if you click on that, you go. It takes you to her Amazon store/page, and that's here. I did not put the links in the description box below, but I'll leave it in the chat. And if you're watching on the playback, you at least know this is here. You know where to find her. So it looks like she has some pretty nice and novel Black history designs there. So I told her I'd do this. So there we are. All right, today's stream. It's themed for Black History Month. I should have had this picture queued up. There it is. This is themed for Black History Month, though the argument could be made that we need to celebrate and acknowledge Black history throughout the year. And also, we should take responsibility for sharing this and passing this on, and not necessarily wait until the school systems do it, because other ethnic groups actually take their culture and their history they take the bull by the horns and then make sure it's passed on. So I think we need to do something like that as well throughout the year. But today I'm gonna focus on America's first Black billionaire, Reginald F. Lewis. If you We saw the thumbnail, but before I jump in, I want to acknowledge where I got this idea from, because the name Reginald Lewis was not in my lexicon. It was not in my in the readily available uh, names in my mind of Black people and just individuals that I should know. He just wasn't there. I remember seeing his image throughout the years, but it just, because I wasn't in the business world, he never really stayed firmly implanted in my mind. So over on the Roger Report, shout out to the Roger Report, who gives daily commentary on um, the ills of Black America in 2022 and ways to fix them. Uh, Over the summer, one of his regular guests, Rael, said that we're talking about all these things, but we need to focus on the money. We need to focus on building businesses, and we need to focus on individuals like Reginald Lewis, who is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And Rael kept saying, Reginald Lewis, Reginald Lewis, Reginald Lewis. And I kind of thought to myself and said, you know what? Yeah, money's important. Building businesses is important. Building enterprises is important. Who is this Reginald Lewis? And so Rael says, uh, you should get his biography. Why should white guys have all the fun? So I, went to Amazon, typed in Reginald Lewis, and within a few days, maybe even the next day, Amazon delivered my copy of Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun. So I've been working my way through this. I read books gradually, and I tried to finish this book before this stream, and I have this much left to go. I was trying to finish all this up before the stream, but I just couldn't do it. But I did take notes. So what I'm going to do is I've jotted down notes and talking points based upon my reading the book. But I found a biography page online. So I'm going to enable my screen share, and I'm going to read through that. It's brief. And then I'm going to go over my talking points about Reginald Lewis. And then there are a couple of financial terms that I want to introduce, because to understand what he did and how he did it, his story is a financial story. It's not just a Black history story, but it's about starting businesses and building empires and acquiring companies and becoming a titan of industry. So I'm going to introduce a couple of terms as we go. And then if the crowd gets bigger and someone wants to come up and talk, if Rael comes through, I'll drop the link. But if not, then I'll wrap up. But I'm going to start with this biography of him on his website. And I'm going to start first going back to my Black astronauts stream with why this matters. So imaging matters and messaging matters. And I my mom might have had copies of Black Enterprise growing up. My dad might have had copies of Black Enterprise. Normally, when I was young and I thought Enterprise, I thought Star Trek. So I saw it, but I didn't really know what Black Enterprise was all about. And that was a magazine covering and chronicling Black businesses and Black entrepreneurs and individuals like Reginald Lewis. So he was probably in there. I just didn't know to look for him. And in my family, we really didn't have any entrepreneurs. We didn't really have any, though my mom did set out to, she was an entrepreneur for a set period of time towards the end of high school. And then when I started college. But other than that, and I do have an aunt and maybe a cousin who have attempted to start their own, I think, psychology practices. But at an early age in Buffalo in the 1980s, I really didn't see a lot of entrepreneurship. So I wasn't really plugged into that world. And I think the the prevailing message from my folks was to go to school, get a job, work for someone else. Go to school, get a job, get a well-paying job, and work for someone else for the rest of your life. There wasn't a lot of discussion about start your own enterprise. There wasn't a lot of discussion about start your own thing and maybe at some point become independent and maybe at some point get your own private jet, and get a nice home on Long Island. No, we didn't talk about that. It was more of a working class type thing. If you're new coming in, please hit that like button. So imaging and messaging matters. And so going back to Dr. Claude Anderson, one of his four floors was media. And the reason, what's going on in extended clips? And as I'll describe, and as I've described in my content, the reason it's important to have at least some control over media and messaging is because media messaging has the power to shape minds, and it has the power to shape what people think. It has the power to shape how people feel about the world, about society, and how they feel about themselves. And the media has the power to shape how people vote. The media has the power to shape sentiment about the financial markets, as I'll describe as I go through some of this. So the media has a lot of power. The media can affect people's self-esteem. They can affect whether or not whole demographics of women think that they're beautiful or that they're not beautiful. The media has a lot of power. So imaging and messaging matter. And I believe that just like Dr. Claude Anderson, someone like this, someone like Reginald Lewis just needs to be more visible. And I know that classically in Black History Month, we celebrate our civil rights individuals. We celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. You're starting to see Bayard Rustin show up in commercials now. You see our entertainers, you see our athletes, but what we don't see enough of, in my opinion, are our scientists. We don't see enough of our business titans like Reginald Lewis. And more exposure to people like this, I think, will get people thinking about building their own enterprises. It might make people more financially minded, but it might also provide a solid example for young Black boys to look up to and follow and emulate. We know that there's a lot of, and I might get myself in trouble for this, but we know that just after the last election, there were investments by Google and Goldman Sachs to uplift the female half of our community. But then the question is, what happens to the boys and the males in the community? Who's investing in them? Are they starting businesses? Who's encouraging them to start businesses? And when all they see are athletes and entertainers and politicians and celebrities, that's when you kind of emulate what you see, and that's what you shoot for. So I think individuals like this we have to get images of individuals like this out there more. We need more business owners. We need more captains of industry. We need more business titans like this. So with that, let me go to his bio, his online bio, and then I'll go from there. I can hear my brother's voice. You're taking too long to get into what you told us you were going to talk about. Some viewers get frustrated by that. Anyway, Peanut Butter Hero says we need to celebrate silver rights. Peanut Butter Hero, did you intentionally write silver, or is that a euphemism for business people? I don't know what you mean by that, but please elaborate in the chat there. Okay, so Reginald Lewis, this is online, and I left this below in the description box. So this is his biography. It reads, from toddler to titan, Lewis's supreme confidence and extreme work ethic fueled his trailblazing achievements. Let me enlarge this for myself. And this is in the description box below in case anyone wants to you could take a look for yourself and bookmark this and even send it to your friends and relatives. Reginald F. Lewis was born on December 7th, 1942 in East Baltimore, in an East Baltimore neighborhood he once described as semi-tough. Lewis was strongly influenced by his family. His parents, grandparents, uncles, and aunts always encouraged Lewis to be the best you can be. Reginald's grandmother would teach him the importance of saving and even cutting and peeling strips from the bottom of a tin can and nailing it to the floor of a closet to protect his savings. Okay. 50, 60 years ago, saving is important. How hard is it today to get people to save money? Saving is not popular. Okay. But Reginald Lewis learned that at an early age. What's going on, Art Newstall? I don't know how late you guys hung out last night, but I could hang out for a little bit, but I had to run. But thank you for sending me the link. Extended Clip says, I'm gearing my young king to be STEM oriented and business savvy like you. That's cool. Extended Clips. Think about if you think about this stream and my Black Astronauts stream, think about what Jeff Bezos is doing and what Richard Branson is doing. And who's the other one? There's another one. Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Elon Musk. They've created these aerospace companies. Why not one of us? Well, we're underrepresented in the STEMs, and you have to have a certain amount of capital and business training to start a company. So anyway, at the age of 10, Lewis set up a delivery route to sell the African American newspaper. After building the business from 10 customers to more than 102 years, he sold the route at a profit. And the legend is, I think he entrusted that with his mother one summer. And when he came back, he wanted his money, and they had a little dust up over that. And he was going to sue his mother. And I think the take-home lesson there was, Reginald, make sure you spell out the terms of your business deals before you execute those deals. So that's part of his legend. I think Rael brought that up. And there's Reginald there with his stepfather. I believe his name is Gene Fugit. So he was born to a single mother, and then he was adopted by another man. And that's controversial because what's the discussion about in these spaces oftentimes? Don't take a woman who already has children. Don't marry a baby mama. But that I'm gonna leave that there. Though, in my opinion, sometimes in some instances that can work out for you. There's him that's probably him there, either at Virginia State or at Harvard Law School. Let's see. Higher education. Lewis was a man amongst kids in high school and college with an intense focus on success. Reginald attended Dunbar High School, where he distinguished himself as an athlete on the playing field and a hardworking student in the classroom. He was a quarterback of the football team, shortstop for varsity baseball, and a forward on the basketball team, and was team captain of all three. So he displayed leadership qualities early on, and if you read his book, his biography, you see that he was very, very competitive and driven early on. Lewis was also elected vice president of the student body. Despite the demands of sports and studies, Lewis also worked nights and weekends at a local country club to clothe himself and eventually purchase his own car. In 1961, Lewis entered Virginia State University on a football scholarship. After an injury cut his football career short, he shifted his focus to school and work. One of the jobs was as a photographer's sales assistant. He generated so much business that he was offered a partnership. Reginald declined because he had bigger things in mind for the future. A handwritten schedule that he kept says to be a good lawyer, one must study hard, in all caps. And he did, graduating on the dean's list his senior year. So practicing law, an invitation to Harvard would be one of many firsts. Okay. That's him there playing quarterback, and it looks like he's graduating there either from Virginia State or from Harvard. Please hit that like button if you're coming in. If you're just coming in. Also, the Super Chat is live, and if you want to make a donation via Cash App or PayPal, that information is here. Of course, you're under no pressure to do so. Shonda has entered the building. Extended clip says one hand washes the other. I think that's referring to my Elon Musk, Richard Branson, and Jeff Bezos comment. Aerospace and business. Shonda says, good afternoon, Dr. Dunbar, and peace to all in the chat. What a great feature for Black history to cover America's first venture capitalist, Reginald Lewis. Yep, we're going to talk some more about that. Thank you for coming through, Shonda. And everyone, yeah, this is important. So his face and his likeness needs to get out. So, please share this in your Facebook networks or wherever you see fit, if you see fit. An invitation to Harvard would be one of many firsts. In 1965, the Rockefeller Foundation funded a summer school program at Harvard Law School to introduce a select number of Black students to legal studies. Reginald lobbied for his acceptance and got in. He made such an impression that Lewis was invited to attend Harvard Law School that fall, the only person in the 148-year history of the school to be admitted before applying. His senior year thesis on mergers and acquisitions received an honors grade. So he was interested in corporate law early on. After graduation, Harvard Law School, 1968, Lewis landed a job practicing corporate law with the prestigious New York law firm. I wrote that down. It is Paul, Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison LLP. Okay. 2 years later, he, along with a few others, set up Wall Street's first African law firm. I believe that's the TLC Group. Lewis focused on corporate law, structuring investments in minority-owned businesses, and became special counsel to major corporations like General Foods and Equitable Life, now AXA. Mr. Lewis was also counsel to the New York-based Commission for Racial Justice and represented the Wilmington 10. He was successful in forcing North Carolina to pay interest on the Wilmington 10 bond. Yeah, was it Jesse? It's in the book. I mean, there's just so much information in the book, and I have so much information in my mind. But he did have his hands in civil rights as well. I'll just say that. There he is in his office overlooking, I believe, New York City. That's one of the iconic pictures of him. The others are of him smoking the cigar. Making history, Lewis pulls off the biggest leveraged offshore buyout in history and becomes the richest Black man in America. A desire to do the deals myself led Lewis to establish the TLC Group, LP, which stands for Limited Partnership, I believe, in 1983. His first successful venture was the 22.5 million leveraged buyout of McCall Pattern Company. It was a struggling business in a declining industry. Lewis streamlined operations, increased marketing, and led the company to two of the most profitable years in McCall's 113-year history. In the summer of 1987, he sold the company for $65 million, making a 90-to-1 return on his investment. Just months after his first successful exit, Reginald F. Lewis's unknown two-man team outbid huge firms like Citigroup to secure the purchase of Beatrice Foods, 64 companies in 31 countries. At $985 million, the deal was the largest leveraged buyout of overseas assets by an American company at that time. As chairman and CEO of the new TLC Beatrice International, he moved quickly to reposition the company, pay down debt, and vastly increase its worth. By 1992, the company had sales of over, those are my Facebook alerts. If they keep coming in, I'll close it down. The company had sales of over 1.8 billion annually, making it the first Black-owned business to generate $1 billion in annual sales. Reginald Lewis accomplished more in half a century than most of us could ever deem imaginable, and his brilliant career was matched always by a warm and generous heart. David N. Dinkins, former New York City mayor. There's Reginald and his wife, Loida, and his two daughters. Loida, as I'll describe, she was Filipino, and they had a bit of a story book romance. Beyond success. Please hit the like button, everyone, if you're new coming in. So a sudden illness takes America's rising Wall Street star off course. The remarkable life and career of Reginald F. Lewis was cut short by his untimely death after a short illness in January 1993. He was 50 years old. Lewis is survived by his wife, Loida Nicholas Lewis, and his two daughters, Leslie M. Lewis and Christina S. N. Lewis Halpern. The family continues to support educational programs and organizations dedicated to equipping underprivileged students with resources to succeed. So in 1993, I had no idea any of this was going on. I was thinking about playing basketball. So the legacy continues. In 2013, Christina, a former journalist for the Wall Street Journal, launched All-Star Code in honor of her father's legacy. It is the first nonprofit that focuses on helping young men of color to navigate the tech industry by providing mentorship, industry exposure, and intensive training in computer science. So you can subscribe to updates from the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation there. Okay, so that's his bio. This is online, but I took some notes on the book. which I'm going to go through, which should be pretty quick now since a lot of them were covered in that write-up. But there are some things that stood out to me as I read the book. Let's see. So we know I have scribbles and I have a Word file here. Raheem Gaines, thank you for coming through. Please, everyone, hit the like button and please share in your network. This is important, especially for the younger generations coming after us, and especially for the boys. I'm going to take this opportunity, since we're talking about education, and we just saw what the Reginald Lewis Foundation is set up to do, but with a lot of people, because they're not talking about it on a grand scale, and I'm going to get back to the media, and as I'll describe, Reginald actually had a bit of a love-hate relationship with the media, and he didn't trust them. But one of the things the media is not talking about, and that a lot of people are just oblivious to, is the low national reading level of Black boys. And there's so much information locked away in books like this. And as I was thinking, you know, there are so many boys who aren't going to be able to benefit from this unless they watch a movie on this. And also, if their foundation is geared towards involvement in the STEMs and computer science, well, there's a lot of reading involved in that. So there are going to be a lot of kids that are going to be locked out. Shonda says, there's a PBS documentary on Reginald Lewis that came out a few years ago. His legacy should be an inspiration to many, if not all, Black men. Okay. So my notes on the book, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Yeah, so we know that he grew up in East Baltimore. He was born to a single mother. He was adopted by another man. Very driven at an early age. He attended Virginia State. He attended Harvard Law School. He transitioned from law to business. He was recruited to one of the top New York law firms, Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison LLP, immediately after law school. And then he left to start his own firm 2 years later. He first worked in MESBICS, which is an acronym for Minority Enterprise Small Business Investment Companies. So when you read the book, one of the things you see is that he was working on helping minority businesses get off the ground and secure funding. But at some point he said, you know what? I don't just want to work on this. I want to do bigger things. So he came to that he had that epiphany at some point. Let's see, after 15 years as a corporate lawyer, with his own practice, he moved to the other side of the table to create the TLC Group LP, a private equity firm. I want to stop and talk about the concepts of what a private equity firm is, and also what a leveraged buyout is, because this is all throughout his biography. And unless you're in the business sector, you don't really know what these things are. And we hear about these things all the time on CNBC, and whenever there's a corporate scandal, we hear about these things, but you just don't know what they are. And this is critical to understanding his life and what he was able to do. So I have private equity group queued up right here. And once you understand these concepts, you understand the power in what he did and what he was able to do. I'm going to enlarge this for my own eyes. Okay. And this is from Wikipedia, which at least in the blogging world is not considered a reliable source, but I think it'll serve our purposes here. If you're new coming in, please hit the like button. Private equity typically refers to investment funds generally organized as limited partnerships. So TLC LP, he formed a limited partnership that buy and restructure companies. More formally, private equity is a type of equity and one of the asset classes consisting of equity securities and debt in operating companies that are not publicly traded on the stock exchange. A private equity investment will generally be made by a private equity firm, a venture capital firm, or an angel investor. Each of these categories of investors has its own set of goals, preferences, and investment strategies. However, all provide working capital to a target company to nurture expansion, new product development, or restructuring the company's operations management or ownership. So these are all things that he was interested in, and these are all things that he did. Common investment strategies in private equity include leveraged buyouts. That's all throughout his biography. LBO, LBO, LBO. So he was a master at doing this. Venture capital, growth capital, distressed investments, and mezzanine capital. In a typical leveraged buyout transaction, a private equity firm buys majority control of an existing or mature firm. This is distinct from a venture capital or growth capital investment, in which the investor, typically a venture capital firm, typically venture capital firms or angel investors, invest in young, growing, or emerging companies, but rarely obtain major control. Private equity is also often grouped into a broader category called private capital, generally used to describe capital supporting any long-term illiquid investment. Bloomberg Businessweek has called private equity a rebranding of leveraged buyout firms after the 1980s. To compensate for private equities not being traded on the public market, a private equity security market has formed where private equity investors purchase securities and assets from other private equity investors. So this is what he was doing. He was looking for companies, spotting companies that might have been in distress, but already established companies with potential. He'd figured out how to buy them, get the debt down, get the profits up, and he sold which McCall patterns, but he did the same thing with Beatrice. He saw an opportunity. He saw a company, a large company that he could acquire and improve, and I believe he sold off parts of it. But this is what he was doing. So I'm just going to read what a leveraged buyout is really quickly. Then I'll get back to my points. The Big Bad Wolf is here. What's going on, Herb? Please hit that like button if you haven't. So a leveraged buyout. A leveraged buyout. What is a leveraged buyout? A leveraged buyout is the acquisition of another company using a significant amount of borrowed money, bonds, or loans to meet the cost of acquisition. The assets of the company being acquired are often used as collateral for the loans, along with the assets of the acquiring company. So you're using debt to buy another company, and the assets of that company and the assets you have are used as collateral for the loans. So this is what they were doing. So I just wanted to introduce those terms because for the layperson, we don't, if you're not in this field, you don't really know and you don't really understand what he was doing and why it was important. You just hear that, oh, he was a billionaire. Well, there was a lot of thought. And when you read the book, you can see that there was a lot of hustle and tenacity and determination that this man had in order to do all this, because he was like the first black person, the first black man to do this. And he had his challenges in doing all this. So I'm going to bring his bio page back up. I'm going to get through my points, and then if anyone wants to come up, I'll drop the link. Okay. Let's see. His first major purchase was the McCall Pattern Company. We read about that. In 1987, he bought Beatrice International Foods. We read about that, and we know that he died from brain cancer. And that was all when I was going through high school. I was 14, 15, 16 years old, so I didn't know any of this was going on. I wrote down social and other thoughts / takeaways. Well, there's a picture of his wife. She's Filipino. I mean, I don't think SYSBM was going on at that time, but the way it's told in his biography, they were genuinely in love, and I think she agreed. She accepted his proposal, and then she was unsure, and then he had to fly back to the Philippines to ultimately win her hand in marriage. And her family loved him, and they had 2 girls, and those kinds of things. Um, in the book, it talks about, okay, so we know that in the last, I shouldn't frame this way, but in the last election cycle, the media was a big deal. We all know that they were always at war with number 45. So we know that. Even Barry, I think Barry was at war with the conservative media. But what's interesting is Malcolm X was even quoted years ago as being skeptical of the media. Well, in his biography, Reginald Lewis had his own beef with the media. He had his own distrust of the media, especially with him being the first Black man to set out to do what he was doing. The media, he needed to make sure that he was being portrayed correctly, and his accomplishments and his image were always under attack. And there was always a stigma to him and what he was doing, because the assumption was, okay, here's this Black man doing this. There must be a white man or white people behind him helping him to do this. So he was always trying to, fight off those stigmas and those efforts to weaken his acumen and his business acumen and his prowess. So I'm going to read something here. I'm going to read something here for you guys to kind of, let's see, drive this home. I wrote down page 182. Please hit that like button if you haven't. Yeah. Yeah. The financial media have the power to move markets. I mean, we just saw that the financial media, they were able to, I think, affect the crypto markets. They were able to affect the price of, the Bitcoin prices and all those things. The media can affect the stock market. They can, as I'll describe, they can affect IPOs, initial public offerings, because I think I just read last night that they ruined his initial bids to take TLC Beatrice public. So the media has, I mean, people laughed at it with the last presidential administration, but the media has a lot of power. The financial media have the power to move markets, create fortunes, and make or break careers. Less than a year had passed since the abortive McCall IPO, and Lewis remembered well the cooling effect that the Wall Street Journal article had exerted, not just on McCall, but on the entire IPO market. So it looks like he tried to take McCall public as well. Lewis read the financial press avidly and respected its influence, but he was no fan of the media per se. Prior to acquiring Beatrice, Lewis had been content to operate in relative obscurity because he didn't need the press to accomplish his objectives, nor did he feel any burning desire to be in the spotlight. And frankly, he wondered about the motives of the Fourth Estate. So I guess the Fourth Estate, that's a nickname for the media. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead to something else. Page 213, which is on page 213. I see Chaos Rain has stopped through. I think I might have, okay, yeah, here we go. The 3 exclusive interviews given by Lewis all ran on Monday, kicking off a firestorm of interest in the mystery financier and his background. Financial reporters across the country were hearing the same question from their editors. Why did we miss this story? In their frantic push to play catch up, some even managed to get on the phone some even managed to get the phone number of Lewis's mother in Baltimore. The news media, this is his mother speaking, the news media were sickening, really sickening, Carolyn Fugit says, sounding suspiciously like her son. The media always like to find something wrong. They wanted to know if somebody was behind him. It's very hard for people to realize that he had this ability to think and accomplish. Could it be true that this man did this on his own? Could it be true that he could think as well? Could it be true that he came from the ghetto? He didn't come from the ghetto. He came from my home. And then later on, I probably won't read this passage, but the media helped kill his IPO, his initial public offering for TLC Beatrice. He tried to take it public before he died. Let's see, personality-wise, he was very demanding, very competitive, very aggressive. He very much, as I was reading this book, he reminded me of my graduate advisor, who was the same way. Very competitive, very aggressive, very driven. Those are good people to be around. If you're around them, you'll be successful as well. But they can be hard to be around sometimes. So he really had a real killer instinct. Let's see, what else did I write down here? Oh, this is, if another one comes through, I'm going to close it down. This is another big one I gleaned from reading the book. So back in my Ben Carson content, and I know that he's probably not popular among some of you all, but the whole affirmative action piece, I know Ben Carson alienated a lot of people with the affirmative action piece and the whole equal access. Well, in this book, it talks about how Reginald didn't want to be known. He didn't want to be the first Black. Okay, I'm going to shut that down. Give me a second. Because these guys are going to keep messaging. All right. That takes care of that little piggy. Please hit the like button. So in my, I think it was in my follow-up Ben Carson video, I talked about, for many Black professionals, one of the things I think many Black professionals dread is being perceived by their peers as being the Black so-and-so, or being only granted that opportunity because you're a minority. And in his biography, he spent a lot of time trying to dispel that he was, number one, that he had someone white or someone white behind him, giving him his ideas and giving him his ability to succeed, but also he didn't want to be known as the first Black so-and-so. He didn't want to be known as as having a Black business. He just wanted a business. He just wanted to be a part of the club. He wanted to be amongst his peers. And a lot of Black professionals, I think, struggle with that. And I recall in Requiem for the Big East, which was about the Big East Conference. For those of you sports buffs out there, John Thompson said the same thing when Georgetown won the national title. Well, why can't we just celebrate us winning the national title? I don't want to look at this as the first Black coach to do this. So that was a thing for him, and that's the thing for a lot of achievers and a lot of Black achievers and a lot of Black professionals. Let's see. So he wanted to be known for his accomplishments and not his race. Um, he didn't want to be the top Black business. He wanted to be the top. He wanted to have the top business. He even states in there, this is not an affirmative action deal. Okay. I thought this was interesting too. And I think it speaks to, you often hear of the Highlander Syndrome. There can only be one. And it turns out that he had a bit of a rivalry with a gentleman named John Johnson, who was either the owner or the head of Ebony magazine. And so let me see if I can read it right here. It states here that Reginald Lewis he basically jumped over John Johnson as the most wealthy or the most accomplished Black businessman slash mogul. And this John Johnson took it personally, and it states here that to this day, Ebony magazine has never mentioned Reginald Lewis. So that might be another reason why. I do remember my mother having Ebony magazine and getting Ebony magazine, but if Reginald's face was sitting right there on our coffee table, I probably would have opened the magazine and read it myself. But because of this rivalry, because of this Highlander syndrome, you could call it crabs in a barrel. That kind of limited his exposure to at least some demographics. Let's see what else. I'm almost done here. And then finally, when you read this biography, you start to understand, okay, when he acquired TLC Beatrice, that company was overseas. So he had an office in New York City overlooking Central Park. And then, he would just readily board his private jet and fly over the Atlantic, over to Europe, where the business was, where his empire was. And they had a home, him and his wife and his daughters. They had a home in Paris. And he was literally a jet setter going from the United States to Europe and wherever else there were companies associated with TLC Beatrice. He had a fine home in Long Island. And he, after a certain point, he stopped flying commercially because they had a private jet. And, he accomplished a lot after coming from East Baltimore. I'm going to read something else, and then I think I'm going to throw the link in the chat if someone else wants to come up and say something, because I think it gets to why individuals like this are important and why we need more individuals like this. And keep in mind, remember, for me growing up, the emphasis was on get a job and work for someone else, as opposed to build your own empire. I started conceiving that and thinking that later. Let's see. Reginald Lewis. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. Philanthropy. This is another big one because when you achieve this status, you have the money you have the option to just give money away to whatever purpose you see fit. Hence the importance of building businesses and enterprises, a la Dr. Claude Anderson. This right here. Keep in mind, A couple of live streams ago, I did a broadcast on why the HBCU presidents had to go to the White House to get money from number 45. Well, a significant number of HBCU alumni don't give back. That's why they had to go. Hence the importance of people like this. In 1987, Lewis established the Reginald F. Lewis Foundation, which funded grants of approximately $10 million to various nonprofit programs and organizations while he was alive. His first major grant was an unsolicited $1 million to Howard University in 1988. The federal government matched the grant, making the gift $2 million, which was used to fund an endowment for scholarships, fellowships, and faculty sabbaticals. So he gave him $1 million. The government matched it. Howard came up on $2 million. So that's the importance of gentlemen like this and Robert F. Smith. And I hesitate to say it, Bill Cosby, Dr. Bill Cosby. But it also says in here that him and Bill Cosby were friends. I'm going to read one more passage, guys, then I'm going to drop the link if anyone wants to come up. If no one wants to come up, I will wrap up because I have to go get a new cell phone. But there's something in here that I thought was interesting. Let's see. Taming the Behemoth. You guys can continue commenting in the chat if you want while I search for this passage. Let's see. Okay, well, I look for that. Here's another passage on the media. This is further in the book. It says, some writers have tried to put a twist on some of the noteworthy things that African Americans do, or else they don't quite want to acknowledge them. They have a limited number of people they have a big vested interest in, probably even a notion of white superiority. You can chronicle the achievements of African Americans in so many different areas whenever the barriers have been broken. Look at the arts, certainly in athletics, even in business. And this has happened over significant periods of time. I remember a few years ago when a kid who was African American and part Filipino won one of the Olympic fencing championships. Well, that couldn't get any kind of really significant play. At one time here in New York City, the number one chess player, a kid of African ancestry who was 12 years old, was the national champion and received little, if any, publicity. The media are truly not interested in promoting those types of stories. Hence the importance of having your own media and or controlling the media. I'm going to look for this final passage, guys, because it involves Richard Nixon. Let's see. Okay. I thought I had earmarked it, but it was late last night. Maybe I'll just make a follow-up video on this afterwards, because I was surprised a lot of our people hate Richard Nixon. Okay. Should I read this entire thing? Dead space during your live stream is not good. Okay, I'm going to read this passage and then that's it. This is a lengthy passage, but I think it's important. And then I'll drop the link if anyone wants to come up for the remainder of the time. Okay, so this is in chapter 14, a door to a new universe. Let's see. Lewis, the one-time outsider, was now unquestionably a star in the firmament of American business, and one of the brighter ones at that. A move in 1989 by Jim Robinson, who was the then chairman and CEO of American Express, to make Lewis member of the Business Roundtable, further solidified his status. Yesterday, and this is Reginald giving this account. Yesterday, I went to this Business Roundtable meeting. The power in that room was just staggering. Richard Nixon addressed the group, which was comprised of CEOs, including Bob Allen of AT&T and John Akers of IBM. Next to John Akers was John Reed of Citicorp, and also present was Mike Miles of Philip Morris. At the other side of the room were Charlie Sanford, the chairman of Bankers Trust, and John McGillicuddy, the chairman of Manufacturers Hanover. It was enjoyable and interesting. Our company is one of the smaller ones, but $4 a share on a $1 stock isn't bad when you consider where we started. I really had to ignore the fact that while I was the only Black person in the room, guys, there's another bot there. If you could handle that, that'd be great. I really had to ignore the fact that while I was the only Black person in the room, who gives a shit? I was just talking to guys who wanted to talk to me and who can relate to me. What's interesting, though, is the guys who are the most insecure were afraid to be seen with me. Please hit the like button if you're just coming in. In general terms, the decision to go on the roundtable board after Jim Robinson invited me may have been a good decision, but Jim had to sell me on doing it because I was not interested in any sort of token stuff. He didn't want to be the token Black guy. But having gone to 4 or 5 meetings, the experience has proven useful. It's an impressive organization, and I'm convinced that everyone, believe it or not, wants to do the right thing by American industry and American business. People have their own agendas, as you might expect, in a group that lobbies on behalf of business. But in that room, I got the feeling that a lot of good, patriotic Americans were present. In general, I received an extremely warm and friendly reception. One day, Bob Allen and I were chatting about football, and I asked him if he played any sports in high school. He said, yeah, I played football. So we had a nice conversation about that. He was a defensive and offensive end before the days when players concentrated on either defense or offense. Bob's hands happened to be on the table, so I took a look at them and said, looks like you've got a good pair of hands. He allowed that once a jersey or football was in his grasp, it was mine. He asked if any sports franchises were available, and I said, yeah, quite a number. At the time, the Boston Red Sox, the Detroit Tigers, the Kansas City Royals, and the Seattle Mariners could be had. There was also a possibility the Baltimore Orioles might be for sale. So he was at that point, he was thinking about buying a sports franchise himself. We also talked about his company, which he is very pleased with. I asked him how things have been going since the NCR acquisition. Bob said he planned to let the other cultures survive, to let them do their thing. I think he's a good corporate leader, a very good one. And Richard Nixon is a classic example of how real men of power with intestinal fortitude operate. Richard Nixon. I think he's shown an incredible ability to look forward and not back. Cut your losses and keep your chin up regardless of what happens, and he never admitted guilt. He only said he made mistakes. I don't think he's ever actually apologized to the American people. Over the long haul, I think people will perceive him to be an honest gentleman. Please hit the like button. Nixon has also been very good at seeking out writers and columnists and people who felt Watergate was probably blown out of proportion by the left-leaning press. And he just kind of hung in there. He's also shown himself to be incredibly well informed on matters affecting the national interest. And by force of intellect and personality, he's managed to portray himself as a man of power and goodwill. I came away not focusing on his improper conduct, the tapes, and all that stuff, but on what he had to say. The man had a valuable perspective on how our country should be looking at certain issues. He had an interesting assessment of other presidents. He thought that Reagan had been a very good president and felt that Bush had been generally good. He felt Clinton wouldn't make a bad president. And though Eisenhower was probably superb, he's probably superb. Let's see. I'm going to read 3 more paragraphs. I'm going to jump ahead and then I'll stop. You know, I'll just finish the whole thing. I see more people coming in. Please hit the like button. He did not think Ross Perot would make a good president. As he put it, Ike was a good soldier and also a great politician. Reagan was a good actor and a great politician. Ross Perot is a great businessman and a very poor politician. If you all remember the 1992 election, it was a 3-man race: Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and Ross Perot. I was in high school. On the subject of Perot, I had an occasion to meet him once. I was down at the Wall Street Journal talking to the editors, and after about 2 hours, the publisher, Peter Kahn, got up and went out of the room and came back with Ross Perot. I deferred to him and let him hold court to some extent for the next 45 minutes or so. I had doubts about whether I should do that or not because it was arguably my show. I mean, I took the time to go down there and hadn't quite made all the points I had wanted to, but Perot was interesting. He was a little leery around me, but not that much. I'm trying to figure out why people are a little leery around me. I guess it's a lack of knowledge or maybe hearing about how tough I can be and that sort of thing. The Business Roundtable is not truly my peer group in a sense. For one thing, some of the members have more traditional backgrounds in that they've started businesses from scratch. Then there's also the matter of personal wealth. And unfortunately, I think the ethnicity factor, so to speak, is there. And it's a reality. There remains a sort of preoccupation with race during any initial encounter in this country, but it fades quickly. In my career, I found the most important thing is not to be self-conscious about it and not to let it interfere with the way you think or the manner in which you operate. All right, let's see, an hour, 13 minutes. I'll drop the link if anyone wants to come up and say something about this, about Reginald Lewis, about Black history, about private jets, Beatrice, McCall patterns, corporate law. You're welcome to do so. Also, the super chat is live. If you want to make a donation via Cash App or PayPal, my Cash App and PayPal are here. So that's Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? That's a biography on Reginald Lewis. I think that, yeah, his example is very, very important. You can build something with determination. You can build something magnificent and splendid, and you can, well, at least in those days, you could go on to become a billionaire. I'm going to read some of your comments here. The super chat, the StreamYard link is there. I'm going to read some of your comments. Let's see. MLR was the first one in. Greetings, Dr. Dunbar in chat. MLR got the bot for me. Let's see. Extended clip says, good day and abundant blessings at Dr. Anwar. Happy to be here, fam. We need to celebrate our silver rights. I like that. Tangibles is what I'm about, not feelings. FBA gang gang. St. Louis produces a lot of black people, a lot of wealthy black people for some reason. I'm gearing my young kid to be STEM oriented and business savvy like you, Dr. Anwar. Yeah, silver as in money. Our silver rights. Art Newstall says, peace, good brother. Thank you for stopping through, Art Newstall. Extended clips, one hand washes the other. I think he's talking about aerospace and business, or STEM and business. Shonda says, what a great feature for Black history to cover America's first Black venture capitalist, Reginald Lewis. I believe he was a Kappa. He was a Noop as well. That's my Cash App and PayPal. Shonda's greeting, extended clips, MLR, and Art Newstall. Extended clips says, peace and blessings to Shonda. Raheem Gaines says, Black men like Reginald Lewis need much more focus like this. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. PBS came out with a documentary of Reginald Lewis. Let's see. That's poor L. He transferred from law to business. Yep. 2 words I love: equity and leverage. Right brain, left brain. Yeah, man. Alive boy. Extended clips greets Herb. Chaos Rain says, is Mr. Lewis the one that wrote the book? Why do you... it's Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Chaos, if you're still there. MLR says, very aggressive, driven, and competitive. All traits celebrated in the business world if it is a white man, even if they execute evil business practices. Yeah. And again, my graduate advisor at the University of Michigan was much the same way. And as I was out walking a couple of hours ago, I was just thinking that a research lab, and Nicole Ali can verify this, a research lab at a major institution like the University of Michigan is a business in itself. So business owners have to be ruthless to a degree to get things rolling and to keep things rolling. But that was his public persona. Apparently, he was a bit of a teddy bear behind closed doors for his wife and his daughters. But if a Black man does it, he is looked at with suspicion, even if the Black man does honestly. I'm going to point out one other thing I thought about here with him being competitive, driven, and a little bit ruthless. Successful people, they work all the time. I'm experiencing that personally to a degree. But I did bookmark this. Yeah. Please hit that like button if you haven't. By the summer of 1987, Lewis was locked into an incredibly grueling schedule from late June until the early part of August. He would come into his 99 Wall Street office around 8:30 a.m. and work on things related to the Beatrice bid until 3 in the morning. On weekends, he took something of a break, getting into his office around 9 a.m. and leaving around 11 p.m. Okay, let me read that again. On weekends, he took something of a break, getting into his office around 9 a.m. and leaving around 11 p.m. That's brutal. That's a brutal schedule. Let's see. But if a Black man does it, he's looked at with suspicion, even if the Black man does it honestly. Stan Shelton says, through Mr. Lewis's book, I learned why business and friendship needs to be kept separate. Yeah, he was brilliant. He was driven. He was aggressive, but his closest lieutenants, they took a lot, and some of those relationships didn't survive. They just didn't survive. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat one more time. I see the numbers going up. I wonder if Bernard Riley's done now. Okay, the StreamYard link is there one more time. Herb says, I'm in agreement. My personal opinion is that we as a culture need to move beyond that. I think he's talking about all the gender war stuff. Stan Shelton says there are no friends in business. They are only competitors. Shauna says, that makes sense now. I don't remember Ebony magazine ever featuring him. Black Enterprise and Earl Graves Sr. always wrote about Lewis in high regards. Yep. There was a bit of a rivalry and that Highlander Syndrome thing between Reginald and the owner of Ebony magazine. It's unfortunate that happens, but it does. Stan Shelton said, right friends and business do not mix. MLR says, growing up as a child, my parents always had Black Enterprise, Ebony, and Jet magazines on the coffee table where my sister and I read. My father told me a lot about Mr. Lewis in my youth. Oh, good for you. There was no mention of him in my home. And that's not complaining about my home. I'm just saying that my people weren't, I guess they weren't that into that. Okay, Chaos Frank, thanks. Shonda. My brother slid through. Amal Dunbar. What's going on? That's my brother, everyone. He created the Big Words logo. Joe the Average Brother says, sorry I'm late to the chat. Professor, why should white guys have all the fun? Was a part of my library back in the day. Oh, good for you. I just heard about it when Rael told us about it on the Roger Report. Okay. Well, it is an hour and we're at an hour 23 minutes. I have to see about going and getting a new phone because all the networks are switching over to 5G. And I was warned that I need to do it by Tuesday, but I was thinking this is going to be the last Black History Month stream. But another commenter asked me a question under my social class, debutantes and cotillions stream. And he asked me, Dr. Dunbar, was your Black college experience like a different world? And I might do a stream tomorrow on my HBCU experience because I think that it very much gets back to the social class aspect and where you come from and what your particular needs are academically and culturally. And I think one of the ideas that I think needs to get out there is that in modern times, everyone doesn't, and even back in the 1990s when I went to college, not everyone necessarily needs or needed the Black college experience. And I went to one. But I heard mixed things when I was there. I've heard mixed things since I've graduated, not just about my HBCU, but also Howard and just other schools. A lot of schools have closed down. Some schools have lost their accreditation. There's just that would make a fruitful live stream, but I have to be careful about what I say because I know at least some of my fellow alumni from my HBCU might be offended if I talk about some of what I saw there. but it's an important question. And does everyone need the HBCU experience? Did everyone need it, 20 to 30 years ago? Not everyone did. I have 2 generous super chats here. Extended clip says, what's up to my brother? Peace, fam. The Broke Genius. Thank you for the generous super chat. He says, Reginald Lewis was an inspiration in my life indeed. Yep. And MLR says, MLR, thank you for your generosity as always. He says, supporting our scholars as always. Thanks for the review. Yeah, just MLR says, don't air the dirty laundry, Dr. Dunbar. Yeah, I have to take a drive tomorrow. So I'd have to squeeze that in before my drive. But it's worth visiting because, in this presidential administration, in the last presidential administration, in the Obama administration, HBCUs were a part of the discussion for each administration for different reasons. And, when Spike Lee produced School Days, and when Bill Cosby produced A Different World, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. And there was a real buzz around going to HBCUs at that time. And regardless of what goes on there, most HBCU graduates feel a sense of pride, when they graduate, and they brag to Black graduates of PWIs about how much culture they got and how much of a family, quote unquote, atmosphere it was. And we have the homecoming every year. And so Black graduates from PWIs, I think they feel a little bit left out. And I think they feel a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because they're being talked about like they're less than, and that they missed out on something, and that they're not good enough. So it's a complex thing. And then depending upon the HBCU you graduate from, once you get out, you really got to prove yourself, and you have to make sure your degree stands for something if it stands on its own, or you have to get another degree to go with your HBCU degree to make sure that you'll always have a job. So it's I'm going to try to squeeze that in late tomorrow morning before I take my drive, my road trip. So should be interesting. So, all right, I think I'm going to wrap up there because I have some other things to do today, like getting ready for my drive tomorrow. But I wanted to do this on Reginald Lewis. If you haven't, please at some point share in your networks. I might download this and chop it up. But it's a very good story about this man's drive and his ambition and what he was able to do and what he was able to build, and all the challenges he endured building that. Being accepted by his peers. Having his image besmirched by the media, having his intellect and his financial acumen questioned by the media, having several IPOs. For those of you who don't know, IPO stands for initial public offering. So that's the attempt to take the company public so that it's traded. The stock is traded on the New York Stock Exchange, and so that it's public, so that you can buy and sell your stock. Just a lot of challenges that he endured, and then also, I think the media piece is critical because this has been going on for a while, and I think the majority of the population doesn't think about the messaging that we're hit with, and how things are selectively told, and how things are selectively kept quiet. Um, yeah, yeah, there's a lot there. And then that passage I read about Richard Nixon, I can think back to a song by KRS-One. I was a teenager in the late 80s and early 90s, so I listened to a lot of conscious hip hop. And in one of his songs, in one of his raps, KRS-One says, I'm glad that Nixon died. So there are a lot of people who hated Richard Nixon. But then, based upon what Reginald Lewis says, you wonder, according to what Reginald Lewis said in this passage, Watergate might have been just another witch hunt. I mean, I wasn't there, but the way that history tells the story and the way that it was reported on, what Reginald said suggested that that might have been one big witch hunt. But once those stories are put in the books, and once history is told and it's tied up with a nice bow, it's history, and people for generations and generations and generations are going to believe whichever history is on the books, if no one's there to challenge it or debunk it. Joe the Average Brother says, just out of curiosity, was Reginald Lewis vilified by by black women? That's what the BW stands for. The way that Robert F. Smith is, because they both married outside their race, asking for a friend. That's a good question. I suspect that some of you had told me that someone was planning to make a Reginald Lewis movie a couple of years ago, or maybe it's being planned right now. But I suspect that if that movie goes to the silver screen and it's highlighted that he was able to create a positive marriage with a Filipino woman, I suspect that will get some backlash and some outcry based upon today's climate. But that's just my opinion. But no, to my knowledge, there's no outrage over it. But how widely is this story told? How often? How many folks? I mean, yeah. How widely known is he? So I don't know. Anyhow, yeah. MLR says it is something to consider, especially in the times we are in. But it's funny. I don't see why that would be a problem. Look at our latest Supreme Court justice nominee. I mean, what ethnicity is her husband? What's good for one side should be good for the other side. I mean, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying they're wrong for their marital choices, but another content creator actually compiled all of the potential successors of Justice Stephen Breyer and looked at all their husbands, and pretty much all their husbands weren't black. So, there's no outcry over that. That's their marital choice. Reginald Lewis made his marital choice. Robert F. Smith made his marital choice. So, who cares? All right. I'm going to stop. I have to go see about this new mobile device. So, everyone, thank you for coming and hanging out in this one. Thank you to the Broke Genius and MLR for the generous super chats. Thank you for the likes. If you're watching on the playback, please share this in your network. We need this part. We especially need this part of our history to get out. I mean, not just to highlight a billionaire so that we can make greedy billionaires, but they can hire people. They can create whole industries. They can give money back to charities and back to our HBCUs. And, we need more people like this. And with people like this, you can create your own media, control your imaging, control your messaging, and so on, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm going to stop. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Unless something happens, I will do the stream tomorrow about whether or not my HBCU experience was like on a different world. Please consider joining the Big Words LLC newsletter. That is the greeting right there. And there is the subscription button is there below. You just enter your email address in. And I promise I will not give your information to a third party. And with that, everyone, enjoy the rest of your Saturday. If you're watching on the playback and you want to put something in the tip jar, that information is below in the description box. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, remember that your attitude determines your altitude. Take care, and I'll talk to you the next time. Oh, extended clips. This isn't going to be a sabbatical. I'm taking my computer. I'm taking my camera. I'm taking all my gear with me. I mean, like Reginald Lewis, this is business. It doesn't stop. Production has to keep going. So I'll be away, but you'll still hear from me. So, all right, everyone. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.